All right, welcome into not the warm-up show. It is the Postgame podcast, and Al had to leave, so instead I've got the Eddie Scozzare. What's up, Eddie?
Hello, podcast people and YouTube person.
And by the way, you keep adding the YouTube person.
Mhm.
I mean, I have a shirt, Hello Podcast People, with your signature on it.
Yes.
For sale. No one's bought one yet.
Oh,
Not
have
sure
one.
why. Do you?
You gave me
Oh,
one.
I did. I didn't even remember. I think it's a great shirt.
Yeah.
I don't know why I did, but whatever. Anyhow, I'm going to have to add an YouTube person. And by the way, based on yesterday's results, it really is YouTube person.
Mm-hmm.
So Al left, so you're with me. So that's kind of cool. So I got a couple of different topics for you. And this is one that my wife and I were discussing. I guess it was 2 days ago. So you had the Grammys over the weekend, and there was a big, as Chris Russo would say, hubbubaloo about the whole Kanye West and his girlfriend Bianca Censori, I think is her name. I forget, doesn't matter. Where she was wearing the see-through sheer nothing, essentially.
Yes, yeah.
Full nipples, full ass, everything you could see.
Mm-hmm.
And it was obviously a viral moment, not in a good or a bad way. But I did think it was interesting. And this is the conversation I was having with my wife. Do you think, now, as men, we're pigs, and we look at that and we all go, oh,
Sure,
my God, she's beautiful. But as parents, you're like, come on, like what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, have we become what our parents were, or I guess our parents' parents were, I should say, with Elvis back in the 50s, with shaking the hips, or have we gotten to a point where it really is so far gone that we're not extreme, that's extreme? Because the Elvis thing wasn't, but I guess you could make the case at the time it was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if you look back in antiquity, there were Roman orgies and gladiators killing people for sport and Christians being thrown to the lions. So what's
True.
worse?
That is very true.
Mhm.
So let's stay out of antiquity or whatever the hell you just said for now. And let's to the modern day. Do you think that we are oversensitive to this as parents? I know you're not a parent, so I guess you're not the best person to ask, but is it something where we should just smile? Not that big a deal. You can look at anything you want on your phone anyway, whether you're 12 years old or 112 years old.
Well, it does seem to me, now again, I'm 57, so grew up a little earlier than you. So it does seem that we are just getting worse and worse in terms of that kind of thing. The sexual revolution in the 60s and all that stuff. So is it just the natural progression of our society, or is it something that's sort of heading towards depravity?
Or is it that taboo is no longer like in Europe, and I know here we have them too, but in Europe, like nude beaches are everywhere.
Not a big deal.
Topless is not a big deal in a lot of countries, as a
Mhm.
matter of fact. And I'm not saying what she was wearing was just a topless outfit. She was nude from top to bottom.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, is it really so? Like even language has become, if you don't curse every 3 words, it's almost like, what's wrong with that guy?
Right.
And we've just kind of accepted it. I know the podcasts may have a big part in that too, in cable TV.
Mhm.
Everything's got very loose. The athletes, back in the day, if you saw a coach curse at a press conference, it was like, oh my God.
Right. Big deal.
Now it's, all right, whatever. He wasn't happy. He cursed.
It happens all the time.
All the time. And it almost seems like you're more accepting of it now.
For
It's
sure.
become the norm.
Yeah, and if you watch the McAfee show on ESPN from noon to 2
For
every
sure.
day, they say the S word
Yes.
constantly. Now they do bleep out other things, but they let that curse, which is one of the 7 dirty words that we're not allowed to say on the air, they let that go.
Who decides that? The FCC?
I guess.
Because there are so many other things that you can say that actually are worse
Sure.
than some of these 7 dirty words that
Yeah.
George Carlin once spoke about.
Yeah. Yeah, like hate speech or whatever.
100%.
And
Yeah.
that's really not that prevalent on the stations that I watch, like hate speech. I don't know some of the others if there are over the air or cable channels that have that sort of thing. I'm not sure. I
Right.
don't know. But yeah, it seems like it's a bit much to me,
Yeah, I agree.
to my sensibilities, but maybe we're old. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see. I don't know if it's so much old as we've matured. Like, I don't think so. I coached 2 summers ago. I had one final tournament coaching my older son after not coaching him for a year. He wanted to get together for a tournament with some of his high school teammates and some of the kids that he grew up playing with. And so I put them in this random tournament in July. And it was weird because I was coaching 18-year-olds. I
Hmm.
wasn't coaching kids anymore. And the language is what it is. And I remind myself, they're college, high school seniors going into college. It is what it is. But even when I was coaching him at 13 and 14 and 15, you saw the progression as the boys were getting older, the language got looser. And I always think back, we were the same. I was the same.
Hmm.
And I think it's more of a maturity more
Yes.
so than it is being old, I
Right. But
think.
but the access to pornography, and
Oh,
the
sure.
type of thing we saw at the Grammys, that wasn't around when we were
Not like
growing up.
this.
No.
No, not like this. If you wanted to see pornography, you needed to dub it off a VHS tape of a
Right.
friend's and hide it somewhere.
Right.
Now I can pull it up in 2 seconds on my phone if I
Correct.
wish,
Right.
as anybody can.
But in terms of language, you've told stories of other coaches,
Oh, brutal.
which is, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
terrible.
yeah. And then the example's not great. Even the language from the stands, from the
Mhm.
parents. I will
Yeah.
tell you, I started just knocking around the idea, and it's more, I think, cathartic than anything. Doesn't mean I'll do anything with it. I started writing stories from all my years of coaching, and I actually put made a list of all the teams and how many kids I've coached and how long it was. Man, I tell you, I give a lot of credit to people who are like book writers
Yes.
because I would when I was in where were we last week? When I was in Nebraska, I believe it was. I brought my computer and I had some ideas in my head and I said, let me start typing them. And I went with like font 13. It wasn't font
Mhm.
25 and it wasn't
Mhm.
font 8. It was, it was a normal size. And I started typing out a couple of stories. I'm like, that was really good. Came out easy. It took me a little while to write it. I looked down, it was like 2 pages.
Mhm.
Like people that write these 400-page books and novels, it's got to take years to put together.
Yes, and but the ones who, the science fiction writers, some of the ones that I read, they churn out books, some of them, quickly.
Often.
Yeah, and then, like, 1 or 2 a year,
Yeah.
like, full-length novels.
Well, especially if that's their career and their
Right,
life.
right. But, what you're speaking to is those people who have full-time jobs and a family like you and other things going
Good
on,
point.
and yet write a book. That's really impressive to me.
Yeah, I guess if I didn't have the job and I woke up every morning and the idea was to write for
Mhm.
7 or 8 hours,
Right.
yeah, that does make sense. I was talking about 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and it was really just not as a journal, it was just more not to forget these stories
Mhm.
because I found all my old baseball scorebooks from the kids growing up. I don't have all of them, but I've got a lot of them. And it was about a month ago. I was scrolling through one, and it was one from when Joseph was, I want to say, 8U baseball from 2018. And I'm looking game by game, I'm like, damn, look, he was 3 for 3 there. And then this kid pitched, and it brings back the memory. So I started writing stuff down
Right. So you
based on
have
those
those
books.
photos and all that, so that does help
It does help. Yeah,
bring
the
it
books
back.
help. The scorebooks help a great deal. And then there's an app called Game Changer, which we started using in 2019, I believe, where you digitally score the game on your phone. And since I still have an account, I was able to pull up literally 4 years of games, and you got pitch by pitch and box scores of every game. And it's fun. It's actually a lot of fun.
And how long have you been doing the GoPro?
The GoPro, I just got 2 years ago.
Mhm.
I used to video a lot off my phone,
Mhm.
and then I started using the GoPro a little bit more, and that's what I use now for the kids basketball.
And would that have audio on it as
Oh, yeah,
well?
yeah. Oh,
So
absolutely.
with that when you get to the chapter about other coaches and bad behavior, would all that a lot of that be
No,
on it?
no, because what I used to do, and it's what I used to do is I used to prop the camera right in center field,
Mhm.
or I would have the camera, like, down the line. It was never too close to the dugout where you would hear that, but what I do have in a couple of instances, I've got parents of kids on my team not realizing the camera's rolling, just killing me for calling a bunt or not having a kid having their
Mhm.
kids steal. It's really funny, and those I've got saved.
Right.
Those are fun.
And I guess some of the more memorable coach explosions from the other opposing coach you would have, you would just remember.
Yeah, those I remember. There's really only a handful of them, and they're good. I mean, they're worth telling the story. I wouldn't name names or anything, but there's a couple of really good ones. There's one in particular where a guy was a fan of the show and could not have been a nicer guy. Travel team, they drove up about 40 minutes to come play us. I was on the schedule, and I talked to him for 20 minutes as the teams are warming up. We go out for the ground rule, shakes my hand, couldn't be nicer. First pitch, he's all over the umpire. How is that not a strike? Second pitch, how do you call that? It was unbelievable. He got thrown out in the second inning.
Mm.
Game ends. We wound up winning the game. The game ends, and a woman comes up to me. She's like, "Oh, so Mr. Recco, blah blah blah." She goes, "My husband." She goes, "He's waiting for you outside." I'm like, "Who's your husband?" She goes, the coach that got kicked out." I'm like, "Coach, okay, no problem." So I go, and he begged me not to tell the story because it would have been a bad reflection on him. He's like, "It never happened before," and okay. I'm like, I just don't know why you lose your mind like that, but I'll never forget sitting in the dugout like, who is this guy? Lunatic,
Mm.
complete lunatic. So,
And it doesn't, from that behavior, the description doesn't seem like that was the only time that happened.
I wouldn't know. That was the
Yeah.
only time I ever played that team. So it wasn't like I was going to go any further with it. If it was a team that we played a lot, maybe, but it wasn't in that case. I had this thought the other day. A friend of mine, we went out to dinner a couple of weeks ago, me and two guys that I grew up with and I'm still friends with. We went out to dinner a couple of weeks ago, and he brought up he's been very reflective of late.
Mhm.
As we've gotten into our 50s now and kids are growing up, you kind of see life passing by. And he asked the two of us, let's say you've got 30 years left to live. What haven't you done yet that you want to do in life? And what don't you think you will do that you want to do? So you're a little older than me. Are there things that when you were younger you wanted to do, you haven't and don't think you will in this lifetime?
Well, I would like to go on a trip to New Zealand, maybe Australia, although New Zealand is higher on the list.
Why wouldn't you do that in one shot?
You could.
Yeah.
This would have to be
Like,
post-retirement.
it'd be like 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, right. And I wanna go to Antarctica,
Okay.
and I would like to.
Is that just to see it, or is
Yeah.
there something you wanna do there?
Well, no, well, just to experience it, just to go there, just because it's so extreme and
Right.
so unique. But other than, like, trips, uh, around, like, the world to interesting to me places, um, there's the well, I will say this. At one time, I wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
I
Well, I
doubt.
don't know what that is. What is
Okay.
it?
It's a hiking trail that runs from Georgia to Maine,
Okay.
and it
The
takes.
whole thing you wanted to do?
Yes, and
Whoa.
people do it in one go.
How
Uh,
long does that take?
well, it takes months
God damn.
because 'cause you're walking, and obviously there's you're not camping every night, but there are some times when you are camping.
Mhm.
But there's obviously it crosses roads, and hell, it goes over the, 80 bridge of the,
Jesus.
where the Delaware Water Gap is.
Right.
That's
Oh, yeah.
actually part of the Appalachian Trail. Um, so it crosses roads, and you can stay at hotels and take showers and all that stuff.
Right.
But there's a lot of time out in the woods too. And that is probably something
That's not gonna
I
happen.
will no. And if I were able, you could do what a lot of people do. I'm gonna hike this section for a week,
Mhm.
and then you come back in a year, or you
Right.
do that. But that takes a long time. So I doubt I will be able to hike the Appalachian Trail. Now, could I, if I really made an effort and a plan to do it? Sure, I could, but I just don't see that happening.
Okay. That's the only thing you think that's really not feasible that you wanted to do as a kid?
I would like to go into space, but I don't think I know there will be sort of tourist flights probably within, I don't know, 30 years, I
Right.
would think, unless, society just collapses, and we don't have time for such silliness
Sure.
anymore. But I doubt it would ever be something that I could afford,
Mm.
like, who was it Bezos who went up for a little bit and came
Yeah.
down,
Didn't
and
Michael Strahan do it too?
I don't know if he did or
Like, where
not.
they just, like, get into orbit and then right back
Right,
down?
right, right. But I doubt that's something that will ever be sort of, the cost would never make sense in my lifetime.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
that is something that's, but that's really just economic and not like the Appalachian Trail. It's like physically, I mean, that is
You're
a
gonna be in
grind.
shape, I would think, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, not like, I can walk a lot. I can walk a long distance and it's fine. It doesn't you wouldn't think so to look at me, but I can do that. Now when you add elevation and climbing
Yeah.
and then also, being out in the weather and if it's cold or really hot, then those are other things that is what makes it really hard.
I
But yeah, I would have to be in much better shape to even think about seriously attempting it. But, yeah, there's not those that's really like, I never really had any sort of, grandiose ideas or things that were really unattainable for me.
Mhm.
Like, for me, I think I can travel to a lot of different places around the world, but, um, to to hike the Appalachian Trail, I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah. And this is I know I've talked to you about this before, and this is all you've ever wanted to do? Or were you planning on a different career and you just fell into this?
I did fall into
Oh,
this.
you did?
I had you had the childhood dreams of just like, and it changes week to week based
Mhm.
on what movie you just saw.
Sure.
But yeah, I did really fall into this career. I had an economics degree, really had no idea what I wanted to do. Went on a few interviews before I think I was still working part-time here after I graduated and had a few interviews and sort of like with banks or this. And it's like, oh my God, this is just terrible. And I was starting to really have fun here.
Yep.
So I just said, what the hell?
Beats working.
It does. Um, so yeah, I did really literally fall into this
Yeah.
and it's worked out pretty well.
People always say, when you work a lot, to me, I always tell them it's not. It's a commitment and a responsibility to be where you're supposed to be.
Hmm.
But in terms of work, oof, there is nothing about this that's work.
Yeah. Well, for me, once I gave up the scheduling, which I did for
Of course.
17 years, I mean, that was a job.
That took a big weight off your
Oh
shoulders.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I
Well, that's
can't
sitting at a desk. That's paperwork. That's not what you're doing now as
right.
the bulk of your work.
Which I was still doing.
Right. But that was only part of.
Right, there was, like I had another full-time
Yeah.
job, basically,
Yeah.
and the worst part was that I was on call 24/7, 365,
Yep.
because 'cause we're in an industry where someone always has to be here in certain positions.
So you said 17 years.
Mhm.
All right. I can't do the math that quickly, but for 52 weeks a year, 17 years, 520, roughly 800 weeks. That's a pretty good estimate
Okay.
right there. Around 800 weeks, you did the schedule. And I'm serious when I ask this question. How many weeks out of 800 would you say you put the schedule out and there wasn't one change? That's got to be single digits.
In terms of percentage?
No, in terms of occurrences.
Wow. I mean,
I can't imagine there were more than 9 or 10 weeks where nothing changed the moment you put the schedule out to the completion of the week.
yeah, you know what? You might be right. I mean, I just like, unless it was a major disaster or we added 15 conflict games and because the Yankees made the playoffs and everything got moved around. I don't know if it was that low, but I would say percentage wise, it's probably like 2%
Yeah, it has
of
to
the
be. I
schedules.
mean, I just see every day, I feel like we're getting an email from
Oh,
our
yeah,
from our
yeah,
boss.
absolutely.
Schedule change.
You know
This one's
what?
out. This one's in. It's
You
crazy.
actually thinking back, just when you said that, it's kind of jogged my memory because I used to have to send out revisions all the time.
Yep.
And I don't know if everybody was on them like now, but yeah, you might it might be lower than 2%, maybe under 1%
I think it's possible.
if it's for every single
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah. So even 1% would be, well, 1% is 8 of 800.
Mm,
So that would be single digits.
there you go.
So that is possible. All right. The last thing I have for you, I found this interesting. Nobody likes a new car more than I do,
Hmm.
as you know. And I don't even mean a new car. I'm just getting a different car. I read a commercial recently on the air for, I'm not going to say which one, but a luxury vehicle. And Al and I talked about this the other day. I don't know if we did it on the air, off the air, or on the podcast. I'm not sure. But I read this thing that said 50. God, what is the number? In 2025, 52 or 53% of all people that buy a new car, Americans, will have a car payment of $1,000 a month or more. Now,
Mhm.
that's the average because you'll have a lot of people, especially the rich, buy the $100,000 cars
Mhm.
and then some, which you see what cars cost now. And then you have the cars, you can still get a new car for 25, and the way it averages out, it comes out to like $1,000 a month. And then I was reading a commercial the other day on the air, and it was something along the lines of, and this wasn't to buy, this was to lease. It was 785 a month, I believe it was, with $5,000 due at signing,
Wow.
and it was for 36 months. And that was it. And you give the car back. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, that's 800 bucks a month essentially. On top of the 5,000 you're handing them over. And after the 3 years, you've got nothing left. And I'm all for leasing. I thought it was a good deal back in the day. And I wonder at what point, whether it's the tolls costing $19 now, whether it's whatever the case may be, cars costing 1,000. Like, when do we get to the point where things have to roll back financially? Or do they ever? And that people just get broker and broker as we move on.
And they die in debt, like you said, like,
Sure. Yeah.
and I have a drop of you saying, "Who cares? If you die with the, it doesn't matter to you."
That's right.
Maybe we're getting to that
We
point
might be.
because, people still keep spending. I mean, and not on food
No, not on
and
rice.
rent.
Right. The airports are packed
Right.
with people traveling. There's no
Mhm.
question. Bars and restaurants are mobbed. And you go out, I'm sure you take your wife out once a week or once every couple of weeks. You get, I mean, just a drink or two each and dinner, and it's $150.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be it's gonna be an interesting 4 years to see where we are at the end of that in terms of the economy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll be in a better place than we are now. I don't think it's going to be crazy different.
Mhm.
But beyond that, did you ever think you started? I started driving in '91, so you must have started like '85. Does that sound right?
Mhm.
Did you ever think when you started driving into New York to come here, and I don't know what the tolls were, $4 maybe at the bridges and
And we're
tunnels?
counting Astoria back in the day.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. When
okay.
you were taking the bridge or you were
Mhm.
taking the Lincoln Tunnel to go over there. If I remember correctly, when I started driving, my dad used to he used to buy the tickets for the toll booth.
Yes.
And I want to say the toll was $4,
Mhm.
which I remember thinking then was crazy.
And I think with the ticket, with the book, it was like 2 or
It might have
something.
been. Yeah, you might have gotten a discount if you bought the book
The
of
bridge book.
passes. Exactly. Did you ever think, even let's not say it's 17 because you weren't old enough, but at like let's say 25, that you would ever see a day where the cash toll is 20 bucks?
No.
I mean, it's crazy how fast it's
Yeah, and I
increased.
remember when the Verrazano was $8. I was like, "Wow."
Yeah. And that was once,
Mhm.
not back and forth $8.
Mhm.
I mean, we're at what, 9.50 now each way, which is 19 bucks, correct? I think for the
For the
Verrazano.
yeah, I don't even know what the Verrazano, I
And I don't go
rarely
that way
take it.
anymore. I do know they put the tolls in though each way.
Yes.
And I think last time I checked, it was 9.50 each way. It's just, you sit there and you work in New York, which is great. And, I'm not complaining about what I make, but what we spend to come to work is
Yeah.
just ridiculous.
Yeah. And then you add another, for us, about $500 a year
Oh, 100
with
for the easy pass, right? A month.
no, for the, congestion.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked it out. It's not now, if we came in later, it would be,
Worse.
uh, 4 times that.
Yeah.
We
There's
over 2 grand.
two things that we're lucky with the hours, at least my hours. Um, the change to getting out at 11 o'clock, it used to be for me
Mhm.
11:40, allows me to park on the street where
Mhm.
parking is good until 11. So
Mhm.
that gives me the buffer. That's fine.
And alternate side suspended today, by
Yeah,
the
I knew
way.
that. I did know that. But I'm out anyway, so I don't usually
Mhm.
worry about it. And the fact that I am at my desk by 4 o'clock, as bad as the congestion pricing is when you're tacking on to already a big bill, at least you're not tacking on the $9 a day. It's the two and a quarter, but it's still extra money.
Sure
That's
it
right
is.
out our pocket.
But our hours allow for lower.
Yes,
We get the overnight Easy Pass break
correct.
on both the congestion and the tunnel itself.
But we also can't take mass transit.
that is not from New Jersey.
No.
Now we could, but it would be ridiculous.
No, it's silly.
Yeah, it would be ridiculous.
I would go to Hoboken and take the path at 3:00 in the morning. No, I still have to drive there.
Right.
Like, there's no way for me to get up here without. If I'm going to take the car to Hoboken, I might as well just come across the
Right.
river.
Or if there's buses, but
Yeah, I'm
like,
not.
what are we talking about?
No.
Or if I wanted to take that last New Jersey Transit train into Penn before they
It's at
closed
2:00
down.
in the morning.
What's that?
I think that leaves my town at 1:20 a.m.
Right.
I'm
So
not doing that.
right. I'd be getting in here God knows when.
I mean, come on. We're already getting in here at a stupid
Yes.
time. I don't need to be sitting here at 3:00 either.
No.
The one thing I wish I could do that I really do like, and I've done it a handful of times, and I've done it the last couple of years for the Boomer event, has been that Staten Island ferry.
Mm-hmm.
That is a pleasure of a 10-minute ride.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
Parking's cheap,
Mm-hmm.
at least on weekends anyway, and the parking's
yeah.
available on the weekends. That's something. If it didn't take so long to get to once you get off the highway, because it does. It takes
It
another.
does.
It's not
There's
like
no direct route.
no. It kind of defeats the purpose. It would take way too long to get in here.
Is it at least probably 20 minutes?
Has to be.
Yeah.
And you're winding around all these side
Yeah,
streets.
yeah.
There's
If
nothing
you don't
easy
know-
about it.
If you don't know where you're going, yeah.
Yes, exactly. All right. Thanks for sitting in. I appreciate
Okay,
it.
my pleasure.
We have got the warm up show coming up next. Al did stick around for that from 5 to 6.
Yes, he did.
So, yeah, that's coming up next. You can do the see you at the end, and we will see you tomorrow on a Football Friday.
Indeed. See ya!